Welcome to the Letters to Our Unborn Children podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Tara.
This is the podcast companion to our collaborative, research based visual arts project by the same name that began in January of 2024 to explore a woman's decision not to have children in this lifetime through a unique lens.
If you could have a conversation with the children you decided not to have, what would you say to them? We asked survey participants to answer this question by writing a letter to their unborn, never born children. Using these anonymous letters, we created 12 large paintings representing letters from 12 archetypal would-be mothers.
This mini-series podcast will dive further into the project with conversations about our creative process and research, as well as interviews with women who were involved in the survey and the private video chat group community, as well as women who have been doing work in this community for a while that have inspired us along the way. To learn more about this project, go to letterstoourunbornchildren.com.
Dear unborn, it's never been a question of my capacity to hold you in my heart. Your not being born does not take away from your impact on my life. I bow to the mystery of motherhood, inheritance, timing, and love. I am living my life without you, and I believe that is my greatest act of motherhood. I am devoting my time, energy, and money to improving the lives of people who already exist on this planet. The creative life force energy in me has been channeled. My internal instincts turn toward the greater good. I hope the life source inside of me creates other beautiful things. I am fulfilled and eager to contribute to the world in a vast array of multidimensional ways. I am a mother, creator, nurturer, and healer. I am an artist, and this, in a way, is also parenthood. I feel like I'm living my life in your honor. Love, Mother Nurturer.
Okay, welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
All right, episode 5. We're going to talk about the nurturer archetype before we introduce our guests today. That letter is one of my favorite ones. It's so beautiful. It's powerful. It's just there's like a lot of passion in that one.
Yeah, there is. I love everything about this letter. And as an artist, as a visual artist, I really relate to it. And I love that I am a mother, creator, nurturer, and healer. I am an artist, and this, in a way, it's also parenthood.
Yeah,
We refer to our art projects as babies.
totally. We've been talking about this one like a baby.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the nurturer archetype. Okay. This archetype encompasses the nurturing, caring, and supportive qualities typically associated with motherhood, but extends beyond biological ties. Characteristics: nurturing and supportive, wisdom and guidance, empathy and compassion, protective instincts, unconditional love, community and connection, and legacy of love.
Legacy of love. Oh,
It's so good.
so good.
And this one really hits the nail on the head with our like ongoing exploration of the word mother and mothering versus mother, and this idea that like everyone has a mother inside of them, not having the right word to describe this quality, I guess, of being that is the same whether you have biological children or not. Like the difference between a person who gives birth to a child out of their body versus someone who is in a role that could be described as mother with other relationships in their life. I just feel like this one really gets into that for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thinking of a mother in the context of a spectrum of relationships, right? Rather than just simply, well, not simply, but rather than just simply a role. Because it's not, mother is not just a role. There's so much to it. There are so many different directions that goes in, I think, and, it's just thinking about it as a role, I think, is really limiting.
Yeah, yeah, and so the nurturer we've had a lot of conversations in our private video chat group about this idea of, like, I am an artist, I am a fill in the blank, I feel like I'm contributing mothering energy to the world in these ways. I feel very maternal towards these things, or towards my fur babies, or towards my nieces and nephews, or in other ways. Um, so for this episode, we wanted to bring a couple of women in from the Marco Polo group to talk about this and their own experiences with nurturing in their lives. Um, so let's introduce them. I'll introduce Andrea. Andrea Wood is a proud child-free woman who finds joy in the richness of life she gets to live as a result of her decision not to have children. As a lifelong learner and dedicated public servant, she built her career organizing to improve the lives of others. Currently serving as a public school administrator, she is passionate about education policy and empowering young minds for our future. Beyond her professional role, Andrea prioritizes investing her time and energy in personal growth, civic engagement, and fostering meaningful connections with others. She's a devoted dog and chicken mother and a nurturer at heart, and finds raising her furry and feathery babies bring the perfect amount of joy to her life. Andrea has a strong connection to nature and commitment to ethical living and loves animals enough to not eat them. Driven by a deep passion for social justice and political activism, she actively works to create a more equitable and compassionate world for all. Her life is enriched by her loving partner, who doubles as her favorite travel buddy and best friend. In her free time, she is working on writing a book about her child-free choice and intentionally networking with the child-free community.
Wonderful, and our other guest is Samantha Frances. Um, she is a relationship and communication life coach, musician, and actor who integrates her personal experiences with recovery, polyamory, spirituality, and an artistic career to empower individuals and couples and groups in building strong, meaningful connections. With a deep understanding of the complexities of modern relationships, Samantha offers transformative workshops and personalized sessions that guide clients in navigating challenges with confidence and clarity. As a talented musician and actor, she infuses her artistic expression into her coaching, creating a unique platform for healing and self discovery. Through her journey, Samantha inspires others to embrace love, authenticity, resilience, and spiritual growth in their lives. We're so excited to have these women on the show.
Yes. Here's Andrea and Samantha. All right. Thank you so much, Sam and Andrea, for being here today. We are so excited to have you and talk about your perspectives, your experiences, and kind of looking at this conversation through the lens of the nurturer. Um, I figured we would just start by having you both introduce yourselves. So, who you are, what you do for work, for play, and how you got involved in this project. Let's start with Sam.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sam, Samantha Frances Cutler, if you look me up online, but everyone calls me Sam. Um, how I got involved was I was invited by Sarah, and I was happy to be invited and glad to be part of the conversation. What I do is many things. Number one that is most relevant to this conversation is that I'm a coach, technically a relationship and communication coach, but I'm working on changing that title because it doesn't encompass everything I do. And I also am a musician, an actor, an artist, a creative in lots of different ways. Yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. And you're in Nashville.
I'm in Nashville. Yes.
Andrea, you're not in Nashville.
I'm not in Nashville. No, my name's Andrea Wood, and I live in southeastern Michigan, where I work as a public school administrator. And so that's kind of my day job. But I'm also currently writing about this decision for myself, and that's kind of brought me into this into this world, and networking with people online. And that's how I found out about the project, was from a social media influencer that shared about it. And I thought, wow, this sounds interesting. Um, and so kind of went down the rabbit hole, filled out the survey, and wrote the letter, and just really excited to still be a part of this as it's like developed and evolved and turned into live pieces of artwork. Has just been really cool to follow along. So I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Wonderful. We are so glad to have both of you here. So, Andrea, we'll stay with you. So, how do you relate to the nurturer archetype in your daily life, or in your work, or in your work relationships, or just in your daily life in general?
Yeah, I definitely connect with this archetype really strongly. Just the empathy and compassion hits home for me. I sometimes I wish I wasn't quite as empathetic as I am, because it can be exhausting and draining. But those really connect with me. The idea of unconditional love, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be biological to be real and valid. That aligns with my lived experience in a lot of ways. And so seeing myself in this archetype, how I choose to spend my time and where I want to put my energy, it just aligns a lot with this. I care deeply about others, about the community in which I live, the world in which I'm operating, the environment that I'm dependent on for my well-being. So it's just hard for me to not see how that is all intertwined, and then the important role that I can play in nurturing myself through nurturing others, but also nurturing the others as well. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Sam, what about you? How do you see the nurturer archetype at work in your daily life?
It's so interesting because I don't think I would consider myself this if I just looked at myself. I don't know. If I observe myself, I don't think, oh, this is I'm definitely a nurturer, but I am. And the way that I do it is very specific, because I push people to see things in themselves that they are hiding from themselves a lot of the time. That's part of what I do as a coach or a sponsor in the 12-step programs that I'm in. And there are traditional nurture type things that I love to do, like cooking for people, and really actually has a lot to do with communication. I really love to foster clear and honest and like open communication with people and communities. And so that is how I nurture. And it's interesting, the people who come to me aren't the stereotypical people who are looking for nurturing, I guess, if you were looking at it based on those descriptions. But the way that I show up in that space is nourishing and nurturing to the people who show up. So it's a fascinating lens to look at it for me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm similar. Like I wouldn't call myself a nurturer off the bat, but then everyone around me is like, "What are you talking about?" Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you are. And it is sort of that it comes from that place of wanting to create a safe space for people, wanting to connect, wanting to help build community and be a part of things that are bigger than myself and nurture certain like ways of being in the world and nurture beliefs and philosophies and bring things out in people. And I just love this one because as it's come up in the surveys and in the Marco Polo group and in conversations, it's like a lot of women don't realize how nurturing they are already being and how they really are already showing up in this kind of mothering, nurturing way in their life. That keeps coming up. We're kind of we surprise ourselves, especially if we're not like, talking about this specifically about children. Like there are people that are like, "Oh, I'm gonna go spend a lot of time around children and nurture children truly." But all these other ways of kind of showing up. And I guess that kind of leads into the next question, which is nurturing is supposedly this feminine trait, and arguably especially associated with mothers of biological children. Like there's some sort of inherent nurturer thing that women have that maybe only women have. And that especially mothers have, this idea of like the maternal instinct and that inherent thing that maybe we're supposedly born with. But the research that we've done and the research out there shows that this actually just conditioning. Actually, I don't know if you all saw this, but I found these videos on Instagram recently where there was this social experiment where they put like 10 little boys in a house by themselves for a week and like filmed it to see what happened. And then they put 10 little girls in a house. And it was like just such a stark difference. Like it was Lord of the Flies with the boys within 2 days. And then the girls had whole systems in place and schedules and chore charts and all this stuff. And like the house was clean and they like took care of it. And they're like 10-year-old kids. But, that still brings up the question of, is this conditioning? Is this, instinct? So I'd love to hear what each of you think about that. Sam, if you want to start.
Yeah, I think that it's probably a little bit of both to some extent, as far as if it's conditioning or if it's instinct. I'm sure there's a little bit of both. It's interesting because in my partnership, my male partner is extremely feminine, and he's much more nurturing in a very stereotypical feminine way than I am. And I am much more masculine, dominant, straightforward, and aggressive than him in the way that I nurture him, even, which he thinks is very funny. So I do think that it is not one-sided in any way. And I also very much firmly believe that um everyone has both. Everyone is there, those energies are alive in everyone. And so, yeah, I do think that our society absolutely pushes women into specific roles. And even when women are in other roles, like jobs that are very demanding, they are still expected to have these other things and do all of those things, and men do not have that same expectation.
Yeah, Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely subscribe to the idea that there is very little, if any, proof that maternal instinct is real. From a genetic standpoint or biological, I think that it is absolutely cultural. I think that, women are given babies to care for when we're still babies, right? That's like our very first toy. And so I think that that propaganda is so ingrained for women that by the time, we're old enough to babysit, it's expected because we're good at it, right? Because we've been practicing, because we've been told that that's what we're to do. And so I think that even though we can recognize that there's very little research to support this idea, it's so ingrained and society is not going to stop pretending like it's real. And so I think that leads to weaponizing it against women and honestly women with and without children, right? Because to Sam's point, in the modern world, the mom might be working too, but she's still expected to be super mom and to do all of those things. And I'm watching my friends try to accomplish that, right? Because that is the societal expectation. And it is very different. It is very gendered. And I think that is a huge piece to our economy in general, like this unpaid labor of women that we've relied on for so long. And because it was unpaid and it wasn't public, it was easy to just kind of rely on it in the private sphere and take it for granted that it was being done and that it was labor. Um, and so I think we're at a really critical point right now culturally where we're having to reckon with this, with dual income earners still wanting to have families, and what does that look like? I think the pandemic highlighted this crisis very significantly, like the crisis of childcare and the costs, and how this labor was done for so long on the backs of women, kind of unnoticed in the shadows. And now I feel like it's brought to the surface in terms of like how it's impacting our economy. And so now the important men in the room have to start talking about, okay, what are we going to do about this crisis if women are in the workforce, who's at home raising the babies?
Absolutely. This actually, okay, Andrea, I know you've read Ruby Warrington's book, Women Without Kids.
Yes.
And she talks in there about one of the things, and this is just a summary. This is not a direct quote, but she says that we need to rewrite tired old tropes and stories. One of them being that women are naturally nurturing caretakers. And then what if, instead of our taxes being used to fund wars, which is considered men's work, therefore worthy of economic investment, imagine if some of these funds were funneled more into these into more community things, like community centers, free college, universal health care, um, unlimited therapy, from birth, and all of that stuff is considered women's work, and it's devalued in the marketplace. So my question is, what are your thoughts about if we shifted more towards a caring economy, one that recognizes the economic value of caring rather than this sort of like more exploitative, extractive capitalism? And then the other thing I'm thinking about is the sandwich generation, which my friends, like so many of my girlfriends, are in the sandwich generation. They're still doing the bulk of taking care of the kids and doing the bulk of helping take care of their parents. Yeah, shifting. What if we shifted towards a caring economy? What are your thoughts on that? Trying to narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, no, I have so many thoughts. I think what's key that you brought up is the devalued work in the marketplace. So traditionally, like women's work, if you will, the caring work is devalued. And we can see that, right? We can see that in how we pay educators. We can see that in how we pay therapists. We can see that in how we pay childcare workers, because that work is inherently devalued. And so what would it look like to rewrite that and to have a reshift, and to lean into um, expectations that men also participate in these roles, and what would that look like? Do we need men to participate in order to it to be valued? And so I think there's a lot of interesting thought discussions to have here with unpacking all of this. What are some of your thoughts, Sam?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. First of all, to me, there's a direct line between, if we were to value these things, we would not need to put money into a war machine because there would be less violence and war. Just full stop. If people were taken care of, then we would not be pushed into, and obviously, if we were only doing it in our society, it wouldn't change things around the world necessarily, but also it might. So that's my first thought with that. That's like a very clear line in my mind. And then I think that it's really unfortunate for men that they're not given the opportunity to get to participate in these things, because I think that I happen to just always be around really vulnerable men. It's a superpower I have. They come to me. And I have brothers who are very vulnerable. Anyways, I hope for men that they get to have the opportunity more often to be vulnerable and to be in those positions, because a lot of them really would like to be in that space and don't fit into the stereotypical male structures, just like we don't fit into these stereotypical female structures that have been built for us. So it would be better for humans in general if we stopped gendering everything so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Patriarchy is bad for everyone.
it's bad for everyone. Yeah. And I think that piece of the conversation gets left out a lot. And people then, and I also find that people push back on me a lot and say, well, you're just defending men. And I'm like, why can't two things be true at the same time? So that was the other thought. And then there was another piece, but it's lost from my brain now.
something I was thinking about that I'd love to hear from all of us, and I'm just sitting here going like, when did I learn these nurturing things? When did I receive the conditioning? Did I learn? Did I have to figure some of that out like later in life? I think I did have to actually kind of learn by watching the way that other people interacted in relationships, how to kind of like be emotionally available and like kind and less self-absorbed, which that's a whole other tangent. But yeah, like when did I receive that conditioning, if I did? And how have I managed to like reprogram? Like what has helped me stop, like get out of that conditioning? I do think it's the people I surround myself with. And I agree, Sam. I think I have been very lucky for whatever reason to have a lot of men around me who are like vulnerable and wanting to be vulnerable and wanting to have healthy intimacy and wanting to be in relationships and wanting to be emotionally available. I mean, a lot of that comes with sitting in rooms of 12-step recovery and like, being just in the community of people that are in therapy. Like, oh my God, unlimited therapy from birth. Yes, please, everyone. Like that would solve pretty much all of the world's problems. But anyway, so I wanted to hear like if you were looking back on your life, what do you remember about this trajectory for you from conditioning or not to where you are now? Sam, you can start.
The sandwich generation was the thing I was forgetting. I have a lot of privilege in that regard because I don't have children and my parents died when I was young. I know that sounds weird to think of it that way, but I do feel that way because I have none of that pressure. My partner's parents also, he has lots of siblings, so like it does create this freedom to be available in a way that a lot of other people do not have, and I watch my friends suffer in that regard. And then, yes, definitely learned ways of intimacy. It's interesting because my family was very hands-on, lovey, conversational, very dysfunctional, but very, we talk a lot in my family and we say how we're feeling. And sometimes could be in an abusive way, but I learned to communicate how I was feeling, which I'm grateful for. But I also learned that I'm supposed to feel some particular way. And I remember learning a lot of internalized misogyny that I have been unpacking for several years now because I was told I could be whatever I wanted to be and do whatever I wanted to do, while also watching men in my life, uncles, my father, my brothers, be very, stereotypical men and talk about women in really stereotypical ways. While also being super protective of me and being like, "Ooh, I don't want any men to treat you this way, but it's okay if I treat these women this way." So it's like confusing, confusing. And so I think that as an adult, I've been unpacking that in different ways and sorting out like, okay, what of this nurturing stuff is like healthy and good? And what of this is like codependent or like weird? And why do I keep trying to be a man instead of just being a strong woman and be, like just so there, I mean, that would be 2 hours worth of podcast to really unpack. But yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you said, Sarah.
Yeah, I think the mixed messaging is really important. I think that happens a lot for young women. I also think about like, I was that generation that was told, like, you can be whatever you want to be. And then I had the audacity to believe the adults that told me that. And then, fast forward 10, 15 years and I'm like graduating and like starting a career and these same adults now are just fixated on like, are you getting married and having kids? And it's like, well, wait a minute. You told me I could do whatever I wanted. I want to do that. Like, and so I think that's interesting to think back and unpack some of the signaling that comes from friends and family, and your life trajectory and like, okay, well, how did I end up here? I don't really ever remember wanting to be a mom. And so the language that I feel like I used around that for a long time was I would, in kind of like trying to make it more lighthearted and not weird and ostracizing, would recognize, would like acknowledge, like, well, I don't want kids, like whatever part of me, whatever inside of me that I'm supposed to have as a woman that like makes me have baby fever, like it's broken. And that was the terminology I would use around it. Like, I don't know, I'm broken. I don't want them. And I think I did it in a way to kind of I don't know, like lighten it almost, like make it like jokey. But now looking back on it, like, I don't think that was healthy to, like, go around saying, like, I'm broken," like, because now it's like, I don't think I'm broken. I'm just different. I think it's really beautiful that we all can express ourselves differently, and we don't all have to live this exact tropey life. So so I think that's interesting, and that's been some growth that I've had in the last few years and kind of just, like, reframing the way I talk about it, like this biological clock, like, I didn't have one, I'm broken, or, like, that sort of thing. It's not ticking inside me, I don't know what you're talking about. That I feel like I've been more intentional in the last couple of years about the language that I'm using around it to make it more inclusive for those that are maybe coming up behind me, who also feel that way and shouldn't be made to feel like they're broken or missing some, valid piece of their femininity because it's just not true.
Totally. Yeah, Tara, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. But I never sort of hovered over him, maybe like an older sibling would do, especially an older sister would do. I was the peacemaker in the household. And somewhere along the lines at a very young age, I learned that was the expectation. That was my role. And I was there to love everyone and make everyone feel better, make everyone feel good, and to keep the peace and keep the tension down and to add levity, add humor. And that grew into when I became an adult. Well, I mean, in age, not necessarily like emotionally an adult. But I went to school and I became a therapist and I worked with children. And I know now, I'm no longer a therapist. I stepped back from that almost 10 years ago. But I was a therapist for about 10 years. And like I said, I worked with children. And I know now, in hindsight, that was that was me trying to make everybody feel good. And like that's what I thought nurturing was. And of course, now I know that a lot of that, like in me anyway, was just codependence. So over the last couple years or so, yeah, I've been unpacking that a lot. What is healthy intimacy, healthy emotional intimacy? What is nurturing and nourishing? How is that different from codependence? How is that different from things that are sticky, that cross boundaries? And also, how do I not only nurture and nourish others in a healthy way, but myself too. So, yeah, that I feel like will be many, many years of unpacking.
Yes, which is a very time-consuming pursuit.
And you don't have kids.
Right, exactly.
I'm gonna throw such a major curveball in here right now, like, no one knows what I'm about to say, because I was thinking the other day, I think it was after the pop-up show in Nashville, where we showed half the paintings, and I was, like, kinda thinking through the panel that we had there and thinking about this nurturer archetype. And I know this came through on some of the surveys, we didn't use this perspective, but I think this is the only chance we're gonna have to talk about this, and I know that Sam's gonna really relate to this the most. Um, Animals. Okay, since I was a tiny child, the kind of deep connection and empathy that I had for animals was very profound for me. And where I saw, like, my little friends, like, playing with dolls and whatever, I was wanting to, like, take care of animals and protect animals. And through my whole life, that's been a really major thing for me, and my dog that I had for 16 years felt like my child, and when he died, it was, like, the most painful thing I've ever been through, the deepest grief. I really doubt that I will ever feel that sad and that much grief with any of the humans that that leave my life. Sorry to say. But it's a really beautiful thing. And we're seeing a lot of that on social media and out, like, just especially this millennial joke about like all we want is like a dog in a yard, you know? And so that kind of connection, I very much relate as a nurturer when it comes to animals and pets and like the empathy that I have there and the protective thing that I have there. And I'm vegan, and that's like a huge part of that's the reason that I'm vegan. And I think I see this with people with animals, and I see this with people with gardens. So I'm throwing that out there if that, yeah, Tara. But I want to talk about it here because I think this is the archetype where this relates. And I do think a lot of people who don't have kids can relate to this. So Sam, I'm going to start with you because I know you love animals too.
Oh my gosh, yes. Since I was little, I had tons of stuffed animals. I hated baby dolls. I hated Barbies. I used to pull their heads off, throw them in the yard, let my dogs chew on them, cared nothing about that. And in my moments of less grace, I will say things to the extent of, I really prefer animals over humans. And even if I watch a war movie, when the horse gets hurt, I start crying. Hundreds of thousands of people dying on screen. I'm like, they had free will. The animal was forced to be there. So, and I really, really intensely feel that. And whenever I feel like any sort of sense of dread, it's always thinking about factory farming and extinctions of animals. Like, I'm so sensitive to it. If I'm driving on the highway and I see a truck full of animals, I start weeping every time. And it took me a long time. My dad used to make me eat meat as a little girl. I would have probably been at least vegetarian from a very young age if I'd been allowed to. And then it took me years to get to vegan. So just because it just did, that's what it took. But yeah, I have a huge connection with animals. I had a dog pass away last year too, and it was really intense grief. And there's just something about the energy of animals and the kind of connection that's completely unique. I love animals so much. I could talk about that for 1,000 years.
I know, same. And it's something about that thing of like taking care of this thing that is like needs my help to grow and stay alive, and like the bond that I have. And I do feel that with plants too. My house is filled with plants, and I feel that too. I don't know, Andrea or Tara, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also a profound animal lover, and have a garden, so I feel a little called out here. I think it is interesting to, like, if you're finding that as like a thread throughout this community, I think it is interesting to lean into unpacking that a little more. But yeah, I feel like I have definitely almost caused crashes on the highway as I'm crying for a pig in the trailer in front of me, and my husband's like, "You gotta go," and I'm like, "But the pig, babe, like he has feelings, you cannot convince me." I've never looked in an animal's eyes and thought, there isn't a sentient being behind there. Like, there just is. I don't believe it. I don't care. Even like when they say like, oh, fishing's okay because fish don't have like central nervous systems. I'm sorry. Look in that fish's eyes. He's terrified. He's petrified. Put him back in the lake where he belongs. So yeah, I'm with you on all that. I think it's interesting, especially when we're talking about a community that is like traditionally labeled as selfish, right? And so like we're lacking empathy. We're so egotistical or shallow, and yet the four of us are like, let's go free the pigs. Like, like I just the narrative doesn't add up to my lived experience and meeting these people and communing with them. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna say it. I want to go on the record saying that having a pet is legitimately as profound of a mothering, nurturing experience as having a human child. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say it.
So I'm gonna share something here. And this is it's about my dad. So he before he and my mom got married, he was married before and he had two kids. And his daughter she died tragically when she was 10. She was hit by a car. And I remember when I was in college, and the main cat that we had while I was growing up, she and I were very close. And cats, I could talk about cats. I'm a child free by choice, a childless cat lady. I love cats. Then I love plants. Then I love people in that order. No shame. But so this, our cat, Sweet Pea, she was a tortoise shell. And I was coming home on the weekend, to visit my folks, to visit Sweet Pea. And I knew something was wrong with her. I just knew it. And then I had to go back to school. My dad ended up having the burden of taking Sweet Pea to the vet to get her put to sleep. And he and I talked about it afterwards, talked about his experience afterwards. And this was, decades after his daughter had died. Like, I mean, at least 4 decades after his daughter had died. But um, he told me that he said, I know people say that a pet is just a pet, but I tell you what, when you have to do something like that with your animal, it can be just as painful as having a child die. So, Sam, yeah.
I don't know. I think that's something that gets minimized a lot, and I don't think that's fair, honestly. So
Great.
had to throw it out there. This is the place for that. The nurturer is the place for that conversation, I think.
I have one more question, and then we've got the final question. What do you all think would happen if we, as a culture, as a society, if we understood motherhood as one among many human relationships, rather than a mother being in a role, like I'm a mom, so this is what I do. And essentially this is my identity. This is my main gig. Instead of thinking, and the expectations are high on moms. Holy moly, they're so unrealistically high. But instead of thinking of motherhood in this like strict sort of, I think, oppressive role, what if we just thought of motherhood as something a little more abstract and it's just a little more expansive? Maybe it's not even something as concrete as how we think about it. It's another relationship. And not to, I mean, I know like a mother-child relationship is important, not to minimize that, but what if we thought about it a little bit in a more of an expansive, broader way than we do now? And either one of you go for it.
I have thoughts on that for sure. um, I immediately think that if we stopped making mothers have to bear the full burden or be the sole caretaker, protector of children, and gave that role to the entire family, to the entire community, more like how it was, decades ago, that would be good for society as a whole. It would be the children would be more exposed to many different points of view and therefore have become adults with a lot more perspective. The women would have the opportunity to have a fuller life, and their transition from their children becoming adults into the rest of their life would be so much better because they would not then be like, well, now what do I do? There's so many women who hit their, 50s or 60s or whatever age when their children are grown, 40s, and then don't know what to do with their life because they were so sucked into that role that they no longer know how to be an independent human. And I think that that's really unfortunate. And so if we all took on the role of helping to raise children in some way, whatever way that made sense communally, then that would no longer be so isolating for people. And I think that's true in so many different roles, not just motherhood, but if as a society we just started sharing more burden.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love that. Love
Mm.
that. I'm over here thinking, I often think about like if we lived in a more of a communal society and not this like nuclear family setup, would I have participated? Would I have dabbled in the motherhood role more, been at least more inclined, because it wouldn't have seemed it wouldn't have been so limiting to like that's your identity, that's it, you get that. Um which was always really unappealing to me. So, but the idea of like we even joked during the panel at the pop-up, like if you could be a dad, would you sign up for that role? Like, and I would be a dad. I just don't want to be a mom under the current expectations. So those are the things I'm thinking about when, when you're bringing up this question, like this thought experiment of imagine a world like that. I think, yeah, I agree with Sam. It would be beautiful. I think it also, to her point earlier about like creating space for men to receive the benefits of participating in this role more, and what that would how that would change society on such a grander scale, if we were all given access to the nurturing role, or not that they're denied access, but the expectation, I think the implied expectation kind of forces people into these roles a little bit more. So, if people were more free to, like my partner, for example, he loves cooking and he's great at it, and I'm terrible at it. And so for our like household division of labor, it just wouldn't make sense for me to be the person preparing the food for us. Like nobody wants that. You don't want to eat the food that I make, and I don't want to live in the house that you clean. So like that makes sense for us for like division of labor. Um and what would the world look like if we just went around and divided up these labors based on skill set or desire, or instead of just genitals?
Yes, 100%. I mean, that's an awesome place to end. I want to ask a question just because we tend to ask a question with the panels. How was your experience with writing the letter to your unborn children? Like, what was that like, that thought experiment like for you?
It was interesting because so I have been pregnant once, and I had an abortion, and I don't really think about unborn children because I don't know, I just have this like immediate sense of any energy that is meant to come into the world will, whether it's through my body or someone else's. And so I had a little bit of a struggle writing it because I really don't connect to feeling that way. But I actually kind of wrote it to my inner child a little bit, to my own child that I didn't listen to. And I remember that felt very profound to me. And also I liked considering the possibility of unborn children and thinking like, well, I think I would have been a good mother. And I actually did want children when I was younger, but only because I thought I was supposed to want children, not necessarily because I actually wanted them. I wanted 6 children, 3 adopted and 3 of my own, because I had no idea what money was or what having children was, but I hated babysitting. I found most children annoying. And so like yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
About 6 children. That's like you wanted like a basketball team of your own. That's yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed writing the letter, and I don't think I would have come up with it on my own. 100% credit you guys with the idea, and just I'm grateful that you provoked it, that I stumbled upon it, and then had the opportunity to do it, because it was really more cathartic than I expected it to be. I also feel like I'd never really thought about, I just knew I didn't want to, and I didn't that was kind of it. I never really thought about what my child would be like, or um but I too feel like I would be a good mom, and so I did enjoy, it felt very affirming in my decision, because upon writing it, during writing it, I was very emotional, but never like with regret or anything. So I think writing it um, was affirming too, because it felt like authentic. This is what I would say to my offspring, and then it really, like, I had real ownership over the words, because it was like, no, this is really how I feel. So I loved doing it. And I've shared the letter with several people who are also moved by it. And I've had several people that I've kind of challenged to do it for themselves too. So I think it's cool. And I like the idea of thinking of like, it continuing and this being like a thing out there that you guys have put out now, and other women, as they stumble upon the project, might feel compelled to write their own letters, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes and to like offer it as a tool because I think it was very helpful for me and seems like it's been pretty helpful for a lot of people just to say it, just put on paper like I decided not to bring you here and here is why. And I feel good about my decision. I think ultimately it's like such a cool tool for like, yeah, getting clear. But yeah. Awesome. Well, Tara, anything else?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I really appreciate you all coming on here and
Yeah.
time and sharing your thoughts and being vulnerable on here with us. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Wow, that was awesome. That went in a lot of directions I was not expecting, and it was so, so, so good. I'm so, so grateful to Andrea and Samantha for being here with us today.
I'm so grateful as well. And I love all the surprising directions it took. What a trip.
Yes, so inspiring. And for people that are interested in joining that Marco Polo group, we've gotten a lot of inquiries about that. You can go to our website and join our email list, or just find a way to contact us through the site or Instagram or whatever, and we will add you. It's for any woman, anyone who identifies as a woman and a child-free by choice woman. We invite you to join. So
Wonderful. We're excited to meet these folks.
yes, go to our podcast page for more information and how to follow Andrea and Samantha, and we'll see you next time.
Until next time. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Letters to Our Unborn Children podcast. To learn more about today's conversation, visit our podcast page at weownthistown.net/shows.
To learn more about the Letters Project or to join the private video chat group for child-free women, join our email list at letterstourunbornchildren.com.